Hello, viewers and book lovers. Today we've gathered here to celebrate the much awaited launch of this memoir, Another Sort of Freedom, written by Gurcharan Das, where he's sharing his life experiences and how his experiences have left a profound impact on the choices that he kept making during his life. We are privileged to have with us the man of the moment himself, Mr. Gurcharan Das. Thank you so much, sir, for taking out the time to speak to us, and congratulations on the release of your book. How does it feel?
Well, it feels lovely.
So, okay, let's begin with talking about the title of the book. It's when you look at the cover, the book cover, it's a very intriguing and very thought-provoking title. What was your thought behind this title?
Well, and what is that other sort of freedom? Another, another sort of freedom. Uh, it is, I think, that freedom from expectations, freedom ultimately from oneself. Free, freedom not to need to be a somebody and happy to be a nobody. And the dedication actually to the book expresses it well. It says, to the happy few who don't take themselves too seriously. So that's really that freedom that comes from not taking yourself too seriously.
Okay, in your book, you've also talked about how Albert Camus' this novel, The Stranger, had a very profound impact on your life. What part of his writings have moved you and sparked that literary ambitions in you?
Well, there were many, many examples besides Camus' book, which I encountered on my first day in college. Uh, but really, it began right when I was born, because my mother's diary said at the age, here I was, and she says, uh, this is a difficult baby. And then this is at age 1. I'm a difficult baby. Then at age 3, she calls me a troublemaker. And so it's really from there onwards, I, and at 3.5, at 3, I also learned to run. And I've been running ever since.
So, talking about diaries, you've talked about keeping a diary in your young adult agehood,
Yeah.
where you've been constantly journaling. Do you still maintain a diary?
Well, I do, but the interesting thing about going through my diaries, they've obviously helped me to write this book. And what I've discovered actually is that in a memoir, you have to select. You can't put everything. And you try and select stuff that's interesting, because you don't want to write a boring book either. And so in the process of selecting, I find you're playing God. And so actually reliving your life is better than living it. So I recommend it to you and to everyone else.
So, right now, only you told us that in memoir you have to be selective about what goes into the book, into the papers, gets published. What was the most challenging part for you while writing this memoir?
Well, the most challenging parts were, they're right through. They're, I've tried to be honest, and so I've a lot of embarrassments. Uh, the first person you fell in love with, she couldn't stand you. And so there were, if one tries to be honest, you have all kinds of uh, moments. The amazing thing, of course, is that at, you keep learning. I guess the most traumatic was when I was 5. Partition took place, and we escaped with our lives from Pakistan. And we were waiting in a train at Jalandhar station, and there's a, from the window of the train, we have been waiting in the train for what seems like forever, and there's a policeman a Muslim policeman, handsome, tall, on the platform, keeping the peace, and two Sikh boys come from behind with their kirpans, and they kill him. And my mother immediately shuts the window of the train. And now, how do you cope with as a 5-year-old with something like that? Temporary insanity, you say? I mean, a whole state, 20 million people who are displaced from their homes,
Quite a traumatic experience.
go insane for, I mean, they've been friends with their neighbors, etc., and suddenly they start doing that. Anyway, there's an incident before that. In I was in kindergarten. That helped me finally later to understand what was this absurdity. It was absurdity. And it was the fact that there was a we were in kindergarten. We all had pencil boxes.
Right.
And there were these two Anna pencil boxes, and there was a rich kid in front of me who had two pencil boxes, one from England, red and expensive, and there was this kid next to mine who had no pencil box. He was a poor Muslim boy. And so when there was one day a recess in class, I went, and there was nobody in the room. I went and took the rich kid's pencil box and put it on the poor kid's pencil box. And then, of course, when everybody came back and the rich kid screamed, "Who stole my pencil box?" Because he was rich. He was the only one in school who came in a car. We all walked to school. And the teacher got very concerned, and so she went around the room trying to say, now who took the pencil box? And when it came to Iron's, this boy's name is Iron, it came to Iron's turn next to me, and he says, there is a pencil box in my front of me, but I didn't take it. And then he looked at me, and he says, you know I didn't take it. And the teacher, and you know, that's when I should have said what happened, but I froze. And of course, Iron was taken and punished in front of the class. And he kept looking at me and screaming and saying, you know I didn't do it. Anyway, so that was that moment of temporary insanity in my life, which helped me make sense of the absurdity, the lunacy of the partition. I never forgot this kid. I never forgot the policeman's murder.
This has had a huge impact on your life,
Yeah.
clearly. Okay, in your book, you've also talked about your relations with your mother and father getting a little absurd with due course of time. Were you eventually able to mend your relationships with your mom, dad?
Well, no, I mean, with my mother and father, it was, they had, my father was an engineer, and my mother, was a middle-class Punjabi woman, the wife of an engineer, and she wanted to make sure I made a living. My father was more relaxed and wanted me to make a life.
Right.
He kept talking. And it began with kindergarten when I come home with a report card and she says, did you stand first? When she sees me at the door. And my father, standing behind her, says that was a wrong question. You should have asked What does he like about school? Does he like to draw? Does he like to play? What does he play? Does he like to read? And so very early. And that was the sort of theme of my life.
So now let's talk about the lost art of reading. Nowadays, the younger generation, the millennials, or as they call themselves, Gen Zs, they're not into reading, and more rather they instead of diary writing, they are working on digital platforms. What word of advice do you have for our young viewers?
Well, my experience is that people are reading. I mean, my books are selling. So somebody must be reading them. And so I don't know. I mean,
Would
I
you like to
think,
tell them to read a little more?
well,
Spend less time on digital screens
I
or
think
something?
they have to read interesting books like Another Sort of Freedom. And that's the secret.
Thank you so much, Mr. Das, for speaking to us and taking us the time. And for our viewers, go read Another Sort of Freedom, because this is definitely going to unearth the versions and the experiences of life of Mr. Das that you have never come across. Enjoy your reading.